The Pearl at the Soul of the World by Meredith Pierce, Chapter 7, Ravenna's Daughter. Ariel rose from the couch. She wore a long, pale, sleeveless gown, close woven and weighty. It was no fabric she recognized. Her wedding yellow sari lay at the foot of the pallet, folded in a tiny square. Impulsively, she reached for it and tucked it away in the bodice of her new gown. The sudden motion of her arm felt novel, unpracticed. The eerie feeling of newness pervaded her still. Ariel shook herself. Gazing again at the glowing white bead in her hand, she realized now that a tiny chain had been attached to it, a filament of silver so fine she could scarcely see it. It teased across her palm like spider silk. "What have you done to my pearl?" she asked. "It burns now with a different light." The ancient Ravenna stood beside the pallet. She looked drawn, infinitely more weary than she had when Ariel had last seen her. Her eyes were troubled. "I have made it a vessel, child, into which I mean to put a treasure of inestimable value. This treasure you must guard for me." As Ravenna bent near, Ariel became aware once more of the fragrance of strange, otherworldly flowers that pervaded the lady's robe and hair. The other's dusky, long-fingered hands lifted the pearl from her palm. A moment later, Ariel felt the fine chain fastened behind the crown of her head, the pearl resting incandescent on her brow. Its white light suffused her vision like a vapor. Ariel was conscious all at once of things she had not been able to see before. Minute cracks in the glass of the wall across the room, every thread in the lady's garment, a mote of dust upon the other's slipper, and the myriad of tiny lines etching the ancient lady's face. With a start, Ariel perceived for the first time how old Ravenna was. Far from obscuring the misty light of the pearl seemed to sharpen her view. She felt a subtle welling of new strength. That too came from the pearl, she realized. Softly Ravenna sighed, and Ariel was aware of the myriad little air currents which that sigh had set in motion. They went spinning away across the room in eddies faint as feather down. "You are to be my envoy, child," the ancient said, and reached, as though to pluck something from the air. "This too you must bear." Suddenly in her hands she clasped a naked sword, silvery, over 3 feet in length. It lit the room. A ghostly fire wreathed its blade, stopping just short of the broad crossbar. Ariel stared. The ancient lady gestured again, and in her other hand a scabbard appeared, scrolled with interlocking etchings. She sheathed the burning glaive, dousing its flame, and as she did so, Ariel recognized all at once what it was she held. "That is the silver pin!" she cried, recoiling, cold horror sweeping over her. Ravenna had changed it somehow, increased its size, made it into a sword. Nevertheless, it could only be the pin, the same sliver of silver with which the witch's blackbird had once pinned Ariel. Somehow the pearl imparted this knowledge to her. Ravenna nodded. "Take it, child. It cannot harm you now." Ariel stared at the scabbarded blade in the ancient's hands. She wanted no part of it. But the other did not withdraw the gift, stood holding it out to her still, patiently waiting. At last Ariel reached and ran her hand along the incised scabbard. She had thought at first it was metal, but touching it she realized it was wood. The scroll work running its length seemed to form a pattern, a figure that she could not quite puzzle out, even with the aid of the pearl. "Is this weapon for Irlath?" she whispered. "Am I to take it to him?" The ancient lady shook her head. "He has the edge adamantine. He does not need another blade." Through the scabbard, the glaive felt faintly warm. It trembled slightly, like the tremor of a moth's wing, like something alive. "Is the sword for me, then?" breathed Ariel. The ancient shook her head. "You are but the bearer. No, child. In the end, neither of these gifts is for you." Reluctantly, Ariel took hold of the sword's grip. Her hand shook. The blade felt oddly light, seemed to have no weight at all. It balanced in her hand easily as she drew it from the sheath, hummed softly as it pivoted, burning on the air. She sheathed it, and the sword sang and whispered, even so softly, ever so softly, a troubling song. Ariel set the sword down on the pallet beside her. "To whom am I to give this?" Give it to your shadow, Ravenna replied. Ariel gazed at her perplexed. She had no shadow. The temple fire in Orm had burned her shade away. Lady, I don't understand, the other smiled ruefully. Forgive me, she said, if I speak in rhymes, but all will become apparent to you, I promise. Ariel fingered the pearl upon her brow. It gleamed, enriching her sight. Am I to give this up as well, she asked. To whom? It is a gift for the world's heir, for my successor, the daughter who must come after me and reign in my stead. Ariel stood baffled, helpless to unriddle the other's words. Who was this daughter of whom she spoke? Lightly, Ravenna touched the pearl, and Ariel felt the touch strangely magnified. Glancing through her like a dart, the pale girl shivered. You said you had made my pearl a vessel, she began. What do you mean for it to hold? Everything, the ancient said. All the knowledge of what runs the world, that which I have been gathering these countless years, searching the city's vast libraries and stores before they rusting away and spoil into dust. Her weary features grew serene then, and for a moment utterly untroubled. The soul of the world must go into that pearl, she continued. All my sorcery with which my daughter must heal this sorely beleaguered land, that all will not fall into ruin when I am gone. But the witch, Ariel protested. The witch would undo everything you say. The Lorelei is robbing the very life from our land with every drop of water that she steals. A perishing drought rages. She has captured the Duros who work the world's engines below ground, and she has loosed her dark angels upon the kingdoms above. Gently the ancient lady took her hand and drew her back to sit upon the pallet. Peace, I know it well. Was it not I that foretold the coming of the witch? Ariel subsided, sat gazing at the other. Slowly she nodded and felt the dusky lady press her hand with infinite sadness. Ravenna told her, She is my daughter, Ariel. It is to her you must give the pearl. And we will pause there.